Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the All Souls Community Forum, coming to you again via Zoom. I'm Joe Robertson, a member of All Souls UU Church, and also a committee member of this forum, which for decades has carried on important conversations promoting critical thinking on the most compelling and challenging issues of our day. Today, we have George Guastello. He's the president and CEO of Union Station, who is here to share the dramatic story behind the exhibit Auschwitz, not long ago, not far away, that is currently showing in Kansas City. Good morning, George, and welcome to the forum.
Good morning, Joe. Thank you. So it's our pleasure to be able to share with you today what I believe to be, and I now see through the community, an exhibition that is more than just a historical exhibition, but one that is actually transforming our community and opening its eyes to many of the challenges that we are faced, and we learn from our past as we address our future. This morning, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the exhibition. I'm not a Holocaust expert, but I will share with you the exhibition, how we got there, a little bit, and walk you through the inside of the exhibition if you haven't had the chance to see it, and then tell you a little bit about how Kansas City was so fortunate to land this exhibition, only the second location in the United States before it has to go back to Europe. And then we'll talk a little bit about why and answer your questions based upon the information I've given you. So I think it's really important to understand the historical perspective of this exhibition. Why don't we go ahead and put the slides up and we'll get started. What you're looking at here is the entrance to Auschwitz-Birkenau. That is the picture of the worst killing camp in modern history, if not all of history. And we'll talk a little bit about this seemingly railroad connected experience, and then what happened there and what went on in World War II with the mass annihilation of those of the Jewish faith and many others because they were different, because they did not conform to the norm that wanted to be created by Hitler's perfect solution. I'll go to the next one. I'll take you from this building to this rail car. This sits in front of Union Station, of course, Kansas City's home, which has become the visual voice of our community. So I think it's very appropriate for this to be the first thing you see when you drive down Pershing Road, right in front of the block fountain and right in front of Liberty Memorial. It's all these things are coming together. What you're looking at here is a rail car, manufactured in 1916, and it was created to transport cattle, but it was changed into a situation that transported humans, individuals that were different, to their death. 100 individuals would be crammed into this car, or cars like this, transported over 43 different rail lines that went into the worst and most horrific killing camp in modern history. Now, this rail car is in front of a train station. How interesting. The same train station where troops left to defend the United States in the 1940s, but the exact same train station that some 70 years ago displaced people returned to Kansas City to start a new life. So here sits this rail car where all of this comes together in front of a building that is to be the home of Kansas City. And we had a presentation when we started this exhibition where we had survivors that were individuals that came to Kansas City, walked on those historic floors and out that door. And then they saw this rail car that we placed there. And the day that we did that, we had our first Jewish city manager, 2 Holocaust survivors, and the entire community telling Kansas City that we are bringing this exhibition now during a time that we would need it more than ever, when we're focusing on equity, diversity, and inclusion. Auschwitz is the perfect example of what happens when you don't have equity, diversity, and inclusion. But, so these 2 individuals, Sonia Washkowski, Big Sonia, and Elizabeth, 2 people walking out the front door of Union Station and marching to a rail car that they were shoved into like animals. And Big Sonia would say, this was the cart that my mother and I had to travel with no air, with no restrooms, on a long trail to Auschwitz. The doors would open. This little woman in front of Union Station, can you imagine what she was thinking? Full circle. In the end, Hitler didn't win. This little woman did, because he was unable to create his final solution of the total eradication of those that were different from him. So that moment, I think, sets up why it's so important in Kansas City. It's a conclave of everyone coming together, the community, the recognition of the troops, the welcoming back of individuals to our community. Can you imagine people coming from a little town in the middle of Poland to a little town called Kansas City? Why? You talk to some of the survivors that are still alive, and they'll say, you know, the reason why we did it is because we came to Kansas City because it was where Truman came from. And if it was good for Truman, it's good for me. And obviously, that was one of our presidents. And it's the same place that President Truman walked on and left many times. So I think it's a perfect story and one that I'd love to share with you about. Before I get started, this exhibition really speaks more about the artifacts, not the words, not the interpretive panels. So I'd like to share with you a quick video that'll set our presentation up. Would you like to play that?
The Auschwitz exhibit, not long ago, not far away.
I don't think my words can really express any more powerful than that video. I think what you see there are the people and their stories. And that's what we took a long time to tell. But I want to tell you a little bit about, next slide, a little bit about the journey and why we decided to bring this to Kansas City. And there. So how did it get started and why in Kansas City? And then I'll take you on a tour of the exhibition. About 5 years ago, this has been a 5-year journey for myself and Union Station and my professional team. About 5 years ago, my goal is to travel the world and meet others to find exhibitions to bring them to Kansas City. And, you know, with Kansas City's brand, sometimes you have to express to them that this is a metropolitan community. It's cosmopolitan and you need to come here. But it's probably only as good as I can sell and people believe. So 5 years ago, I was in a conference in Atlanta in a very small hotel room, which of course none of us, conference room, where none of us are doing that today. And it's one of the professional times where museums around the world come together and people come and give a 2-minute pitch on their idea or their exhibition. And you're looking for the right one and you're trying to find that special Rocky that nobody else sees. And this young gentleman, 30 years old, by the name of Luis Fierro, stood up and gave a 2-minute presentation on the Holocaust. Everybody else in the room, I don't think, understood what he was saying. Saying, "Oh, we've seen that. How are you going to compete with something in Washington? We've seen that story. Everybody's seen it." But he gave such an impassioned speech, at least to me, and it was about the people. So immediately after this 2-minute presentation, I walked up to him, nobody else did, and I said, "We want to do this exhibition. We believe in what you're saying. Let us be part of an early adopter and let us take you on a journey with us. And we want to be on your journey. But if you're only going to tell a story like everybody else tells a story about Auschwitz, a historical experience, and you end it at the end where you listen to the survivors and they say never again, and we get to see a ton of shoes and all that, not interested." So that started this journey with him. And he said, explain what he was doing and why he was doing it. And over the next 5 years, we went back and forth talking about the concept and watched his ideas come to life. A 30 years old kid that had not had any connection with a museum in Poland, that had never sent their artifacts out anywhere in the world to make this and happen, is truly a miracle. And I really believe, I always believe that people are sent to you for reasons and you have to be with them. So we met him, we talked about him, we went around the world with him and let him do some stories, but we always talked about the end of the exhibition. What did you want to leave with people? And what was the real purpose of this exhibition? Is it just to show artifacts, just to tell and see and show horrific pictures of people and their pain? Or is it much deeper than that? And we'll walk through this now. And he shared why. And why was to tell the story that it should never happen again through the eyes of those that lived it. And you see that through the artifacts. We have 700 artifacts that have been on the United States before. But the artifacts tell the story. But it all tells the story through a process. Let's go to the next story. So when you enter Auschwitz, you see the massive building, hologram projected on the wall, and you start to see where you are. And you're descending into the Bank of America galleries down that very long ramp in that very dark area with the historic pump rooms, if you've been there before. And you start to feel as though you are being immersed into Auschwitz. But we take you before the war, and you enter and you find out where Auschwitz is. Where is it compared to Kansas City? And we take you down, and as we move you through, we start to bring you into a nearly 20,000 square foot exhibition. You learn about how Auschwitz and the Holocaust came to reality and what were the steps to get there. And then what happened to people. And then at the end, what is the process? Let me take it to the next step. When we enter, the first thing you see before this piece, is a New York Times story. When Auschwitz was liberated, and it was a very tiny story in the New York Times on a jump page, 3 pages after the front page, saying that it was liberated, and that was it. No coverage. So you learn about that, you learn about where Auschwitz is, and then you enter the gallery. And the first thing you see is this one single red shoe. And I think it's important to understand how Luis created this. He tells the story, and we tell the story in juxtaposition to 2 individuals, the perpetrator and the prisoner. And at all times, in every room and in every gallery, you start to let that artifact tell you the story, but it's juxtaposed to another artifact. So when you enter this room, you see this one single red shoe. That's it. And it's one individual. Who was this woman? What was she wearing? She's obviously dressed up. Was she a Roma? Was she a Jew? But they found it. This one red shoe that's in the exact same spot that for those of you that came to see Diana, her crown was in that exact same spot. And here's this most poignant red shoe of an individual. To the left of it, it's juxtaposed to a giant rail wheel. A little bit of red on it, and you see the 2 reds connected. Behind that giant wheel is the mass industrialization of the killing camps. The modernization of the rail systems juxtaposed to this one little red shoe. And in the end, as we take you on this journey, you start to learn about the 2. But in the end, as I indicated before, that soul, no pun intended, has lived on. And that soul, she died, but Hitler was not able to accomplish what he called his final solution. So in the end, their lives were not murdered in vain. They're able to stay alive through their spirits and their story to ensure that it never happens again. So that's what you start to see. So as we enter, we'll now take you on the next tour. And the next thing you see are the posts and the barbed wire. It's the first thing you see. When I walk through the exhibition, I want you to look at this artifact, because what the exhibit does, as I told you, does not show you horrific pictures. It's a horrific story. But what we've done is allow the artifact to play the movie in your mind of the horror. And that starts to set it in your soul. You get an audio tour that lasts nearly 3 hours, and you learn the background information, and it's pretty magnificent. But let's look at these posts for just a moment. They were created and built by the prisoners, by the Jewish. So that aggregate that's on there is from that area. It was built by the people. And when you look at the barbed wire, it says something. It keeps people in. What Hitler did during the war in his ghettos is he built giant brick walls around the ghettos so you wouldn't look at what he called the dirty people. He kept them in their ghettos. He kept them away from you. You must not go in there. But the evil that they created when they opened up the camps, everything is being able to be seen. You see the horrific everywhere. So the horror of the prisoners have to look through that, seeing what they were. Now, of course, it's all at the beginning. You make you think that you're going somewhere that isn't as so horrific, and then it becomes horrific. When I was in this exhibition, and this is the first thing you see, and it just goes on and on, I asked one of the survivors, and she was asking me, she said, when I look at this electrified fence, some of us look at it as barbed wire that kept us in. that made us a prisoner. Of course, we had to see everything that was around us, the uniforms, the malnutrition. But others saw this as a moment and as a symbol of freedom. For if they couldn't handle it, they would touch it, and it would immediately set them free from the pain that they would experience from suicide. So there, again, juxtaposition, every artifact has a different story and a different meaning. So as we take you and understand that you're now going to be crammed in and experience, we move you on. Take you to the next one. Now it's time for us to understand and appreciate what I say, perpetrator, prisoner. So we tell you about those of the Jewish faith. And this is a synagogue that would have been in Poland. It's no longer there. Nothing in Poland and Auschwitz has any religious experience left. It was all destroyed. So we tell you about the family, the faith, what was going on. And we see that, and then it's juxtaposed to how you see Hitler and the rising at the Third Reich, there at Nuremberg, where he was, why he took that information, spun it against those that had, because they had not. Because all of this was set up because of, as I said a little bit earlier, World War I, right? What happened at the end of World War I and the economic challenges, all of that set them in the state. So what ended up happening was you looked at those that had something, took it away from them and blamed them, but they were different. So what did Hitler do? He created his Aryan race. So if I look over to the upper right picture, I see the pictures of the Aryan race that he wanted to create. Uniforms created and sewn by Hugo Boss, right? A designer. All of that looked perfect. Every one of them was perfect. But do you see the juxtaposition right behind it of the uniform that those that were imprisoned were? And when you look at it, it's always juxtaposed next to the evil where Hitler was posing up against them. And then in that picture, you see a little triangle always placed on the prisoners, even when they're there, denoting why they were there and who they were. It may be a red triangle. That red triangle meant you were political. It may have been a yellow star. That meant you were Jewish, but then it had a triangle. It may have been a pink triangle that indicated that you were homosexual. May a homosexual man, lesbian, everything was labeled. But you were different than the perfection that in his mind was there. So we take you through, next slide, and then we take you through and you start to see what's happening. And this picture, I think, is probably, we've already moved you through many areas that you'd seen associated with Mengele, his scientific situations. And now where we are in this room, I think it really sets the stage for what you begin to see and understand. This is Rudolf Hess's desk. Look at the desk. Look at it closely. He's looking across that desk. Coffee cup, just like any other business. Picture of the uniforms from Rudolf Hess. And then a picture of his family and how beautiful all the grounds were for his family that were living there on the camp, but completely isolated. And it was a utopia for them. And he's looking there. And if you look to the left, he sees the prisoners and who they were. And if he looks to the right, he sees his people who carry out his evil. But everything about this experience is torture and hatred. Now you look at this desk, very calm, and he's looking. I want you to look at the prisoner's uniform, the hat that would be worn, the knapsack, how itchy it would be all the time, wooden shoes that you would be able to have to wear to cause the pain to this individual, all perpetrated by the perpetrators. And then you look there and you look very far behind it and you look at the barracks. And you can imagine he put people in barracks, one on top of the other. Now, if you think of summer camp, right, you always kind of would run up. You want to be on the lower one, right? In this way, even sleep was terror. These people were sick. And so if you can imagine the sickness and the human excrement that would be happening would fall on you. So no matter what you were doing, where you are, you were constantly persecuted, in constant hatred. So this gives you an idea of what we're seeing. We'll take you on, and we've already took you through the history. We take you into this room, and then I take you to the barracks that have never been on the United States. You'll see the barracks. That's the next shot. This was actually torn down, brought here, recreated. So you'll actually have a chance to see that. Some say, what do the women wear? That's a woman's uniform all the way to the back. He shaved everyone's head, every woman's head. What was usually the most important part of a woman's beauty, right, in that time would have been their hair. But they had to keep their heads covered at all times. So he took the final religious experience off of it. Let's go to the next one. I think this will be the one that I think tells you what you're going to experience if you haven't already. We tell you the story through the artifacts. You don't see any pictures of horrific people dying right there. What you're seeing here is one shoe. 2, 3-year-old little person. We don't know if it was a boy. We don't know if it's a little girl. Look at the sock. Easily tucked into that shoe. And that shoe's in front of the doors to the gas chamber. If you're a mom, you're with your child, because women and children were killed immediately when they got there. The doors were open, one went one way, one went the other. Those that had to be serving the camps were usually 17 to 20 some odd years old. Look at that. Can you imagine the words, the mother saying, the guard saying, you'll be back. You're just going to go into this shower. You'll be fine. And a mother saying, put your shoes, take it there, keep them laced up. When we come out, we'll be fine. Then you will go back, get your shoes. The horror that was set. This is what I'm speaking to. The juxtaposition of the perpetrator and the prisoner. And I'll give you a side story. When most of those that were in camp were tattooed, right? With a number on. Sonia told me, I was in the car. When I was separated, before I separated my mother, she said, make sure you know that number they're putting on you. It's okay. That's how I'm going to be able to find you. Thinking a mother saying that to a child to calm them down because they knew what was happening. But while they were doing that, they know that they were being degraded by their religion, by being tattooed, which is against your religion. Evilness. So this is what we're seeing. And Sonia looked through a hole in wood and watched her mother go to the chambers in a certain way while she was survived. So this is what you see, but I want you to see that center circle there. That is a peephole. It was on the inside of the showers, had a cover on it, because they didn't want to have, the perpetrators did not want to have to see that. And they kept it closed, nor did they want to watch you to look out. Let me take you to the next one. So I think this tells you the inhumanity, but there's more. All the artifacts, all the experiences, I show you a couple of these to give you an idea of what you're looking at. But we take you through, when we enter, before you got to the gas chambers, and I missed that, we take you up a ramp, a very wooden ramp, and you start to feel and you see all the pictures of the individuals, and mostly children's and families, kids. And as they walked up, they would always talk about the shiny boots that they would see, always looking down. And these are a book. So as you marched up that ramp, the first thing you saw were those boots and that chain link fence and the terror that they experienced. And we turn you around. But there's more to the story that you'll learn. You'll learn about things that you never knew before. The numbers of individuals, millions of people that were killed. Not only the worst, which were those of the Jewish faith, but there were so many more. The numbers of Romas, gypsies, right? Catholics, priests, Homosexual men, we tell a big story about that and how it came to rat. But you'll see a Picasso. That's to the left. That Picasso is, he painted, and based upon when he went to Auschwitz. Look at that little stuffed doll. It was probably taken from a child. There's something more story behind that. For this is an artifact and a doll that the gentleman that runs the museum in Poland was his. And then look at the very far back. I want you to, maybe you can make it out. It looks like a monk, a priest. That's Maximilian Kolbe. And this is towards the last room. And right in front of that juxtaposition, you will see a Madonna. And you're asking yourself, why am I seeing a Madonna and a Catholic priest? Why am I seeing an altar? Maximilian Kolbe was the first beatified Polish saint, beatified by the first Polish pope. Again, Hitler's final solution did not work out. But Maximilian Kolbe was a Franciscan, and he was harboring and protecting those of the Jewish faith in Poland in the churches. He was arrested and brought to Auschwitz. But as I told you, somebody different. And when he was there, he was imprisoned. And I told you about the barbed wire electrical fences. There were people that escaped. But what Hitler and Hess said was, if you escaped, we will kill 10 other people because you escaped. So again, the constant torture and hatred of what he would play in people's minds. This person escaped. That person knew that these people, 10 other people were going to die. And they took the 10 people. One was a Jewish gentleman, had a family, wife and children. Kolbe said, take my life. So he put his life up. So the other guy was set free. Now they didn't kill Kolbe immediately. They starved him until he died a very horrible death. And he made sure that everybody saw that. And that's the shrine that's in a Catholic shrine inside Auschwitz in his memory. Again, one act changes the act of many. So that's what you see. And I'll take you to the last room because I always told you this is what the most important is. This is the last thing you will read. In order for us to do something different. We take you into the last room, and I told you about the important story about how Luis wanted to end this, which was about the people and how one person's life could make a difference. Little did we know millions of lives should and could make a difference, that it never happens again. And then at the very end of that room, we take you through all this horror and the stories that you've now learned, and we place you in a room. And in that room are pictures, Super 8s, videos, film of all of those that perished, that were murdered, alive again, at bar mitzvahs, at weddings, at brisses, marching down the fields in Poland, marching in the Romas. And you see that, and then you experience that in the end, they did not die in vain. They died so that we must and do this in order to propagate it and tell the story. By doing nothing in your life allows Hitler to win. But in the end, he lost because everyone fought against him. And we must do that today. So that's the strategy of this exhibition, so that we tell now is the time to make a difference. I will tell you that last room and how this all came about the exhibition, at the very end, and then we'll move on. When Luis was a 30-year-old young gentleman to start this idea, he and his family ran exhibitions in Europe. One was Titanic. It was a family-owned business, four family members, mother, father, a brother, and him. They had just finished setting up for one of their Titanic exhibitions. And the last thing he said to his brother is, "I'll see you at the piazza later." He was waiting for his brother, never heard the phone call, but then got a cell phone call that said, "Your brother just died. Sudden death." Sent him into, right, out of tragedy, do something. So Luis did something based upon it. About a year later, someone gave him a book, Search for Man's Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I don't know if you've read it. It's a small little book. It's amazing. He read this book, and that started his journey to create this exhibition that is making difference in our community. I hope you each have a chance to read it. But in the end, we were talking about this last room. I'm a firm believer that people are sent to you for reasons and how you collaborate. And so as we got closer, he finally came up with the last ideas. We said, I want you to come. I want this exhibition to be like 9/11's museum in New York. You go through it, you go down, you experience it all. And what happens at the very end? You get in an escalator out of the darkness and the abyss, and you slowly ascend into the light, as though their spirits go with you. And that's an emotional experience, but it sets the tone in your heart for about what you had just experienced, and that the soul lives on, and they're not forgotten, and never again. And I think it's a little bit different than the memorial. I'm not going to talk about that because I always feel the memorial goes down, which is a whole different story. But so I asked him, how did he finally come up with the idea? He said, you know what? We talked about his brother. And he said, I was having a conversation and it hit me. The only way I remember my brother, and of course the dogs. The dogs are an important part of Auschwitz. And I'll tell you about that a little bit later. But he said to me, the only way we remembered my brother was from the pictures. We would look at our family pictures and it would evoke the emotion and the memory. And he lives on in my soul. So that's the gentleman. And that's what we've been able to create. And where are we today? Next slide. Well, we announced it in September 15th in 2020, during the height of a pandemic. None of us had any masks on. Please don't send me hateful messages. And we announced it, and we opened on June 14th, 2021, at hopefully the opening and the end of the pandemic, or what was to believe to be that. We took a significant risk. It was the most expensive exhibition that we have ever done in our lives. But we have seen an unbelievable response. Before we opened, we had sold nearly 78,000 ticket pre-sale, never before in our history, during a pandemic. And as of this week, we've now sold over 208,000 tickets. I want you to think about this for just a moment. I am told, the total population in our Kansas City area of 14,000 of the Jewish faith. We knew our break even was going to have to be well over 100,000. So we had to say everyone of the Jewish faith of 14,000 had to come, and we'll still lose money. So we went ahead, the community came together, and we found some amazing sponsors that underwrote the risk. And now today, almost 210,000. When we reach 220, that will mean that nearly 1 million people have seen this exhibition around the world. Over 50 states now 49 states have seen the exhibition. Only one that hasn't been is Delaware. I don't know, maybe Joe Biden will come and then I'll be happy. And then the earned media and the stories have been off the charts. Well over $500,000 of earned media, nationally, locally. We've been in the Washington Post, you name it. We've been everywhere, and all of it as why? Why Kansas City? Why a little town? Why in a community that had already experienced hatred through all the murders out at the Jewish Community Center? And I think the answer was Louise said, it's the heart of America, but what we found was that Kansas City had a heart that embraced it. Next slide. We have many things coming up. We have a very detailed seminar series that we partner with the Midwest Center for Holocaust Education. And I hope you go to our website. They are very diverse, very unique, and tells a richer and deeper story. To the right, as I indicated, you really can't do it without the amazing community support that we've received because of this, that has allowed us to see this. Next slide. And the little things that we've done, these are just some of the responses that we've received. They're heart-wrenching and they're amazing. We cover our and respond to our customers. We do a net promoter score that many businesses do on their products. This is receiving nearly 100. We have never received 100. It's it's unheard of. And the people's responses have been amazing. This is a picture when we opened. We invited all of the Holocaust survivors that were still here in Kansas City to be the very first to see the exhibition. And it was a haunting experience to watch. They just stood in the corners and experienced it. And then at our opening, you'll see the picture up there of the White Rose Society. And this was what greeted all of our guests at the very beginning to the opening of the exhibition. And then we gave everyone a stone in the Jewish faith. You place that on the where someone is buried. And everyone placed a stone for those that loved. But I think this is it. It's transformable. It's profound. It gave me information I didn't know. Some of my favorite ones, it's better than the exhibit in Washington, which I believe it is because it's about the people. And there is wonderful little Sonia, 4'5", 4'10", standing in front of that rail car and saying, I'm sure in her mind, hey, you didn't win, you son of a bitch. Pardon me. I didn't mean to say that. You didn't. We did. And I'm here to stay that we are going to tell the story that it must never happen again. So from a very tiny woman comes an amazing story that makes our lives better. And so that's it. I'd ask you to do one last slide, and then we'll open it up for questions. I probably went way too long. You know, we just didn't do this in order to support and save Union Station as we always do, because every dollar that our customers experience, stay right here at Union Station. This is going to allow us the opportunity to continue to build our reputation, to continue to build upon the successes that we've had, such as and Titanic and Pompeii. I invite you to come and visit the exhibition, experience it for yourself, let it touch your heart, then share the contents that you've experienced, and then start a conversation in your own community. Talk about what you've seen. Allow it to cause the conversation about diversity and inclusion and why it's important. And then at the end, ensure that you've equipped yourself to do something, to say something. You know, 9/11 taught us, see something, say something. And now I think through all the pain and perils that we've seen over the last few years, you need to see something, say something, but most importantly, do something. And I hope we're doing something for our community. I know we are. And that's all I have to share. Thank you for giving me the chance to talk a little bit about the exhibition, a little bit about Union Station, and hopefully encourage you to see the exhibition. So I'm open for conversation and questions.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, George.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so now we are going to get ready to turn it over to you, our audience, to ask questions. But first, we are going to take a quick break to tell you how you can make a contribution to support this program here at All Souls, the forum. So so roll the tape.
All right, thanks for attending today. The All Souls Forum is very important to our church. It provides us a chance to discuss the significant issues that impact our community. It's also important to me personally because I get to learn about the political issues that shape our world and ask questions of our speakers. From the attempted coup on the Capitol to recycling, we discuss all of the important issues. It costs about $100 a week to produce the forum. That's less than $5 a week per person watching on an average week. Andrea, can you show us how to support the UU Forum?
I'd be happy to, Richard. You can always send a check to the church. Be sure to put forum in the memo line. You'll find the address in chat, or you can find it on our website. To pay online, you can go to the All Souls website and click the big blue button, or click the link in chat. When you get to the giving page, enter the amount that you would like to give. On the next line, be sure to pick Give to Forum so that the money comes to support the forum. After that, you can choose how often you'd like to give. You can leave it at Give This One Time, or you can pick Give This Weekly, every 2 weeks, monthly, or yearly.
I like the idea of making a payment each month. It's just easier to budget.
I agree. That's what I usually do. After that, you can choose if you'd like to give with a debit card, credit card, or ACH bank transfer. The bank transfer will ask you to enter your numbers off of your check, and it will come directly out of your checking account. Once you've chosen that, pick Continue, enter the rest of your information. Feel free to add any comments you'd like. And if you'd like to cover the processing fee, you can click the button there and then click the Give bar.
Well, that seems easy enough. And let me take a moment to just say, hey, thanks to everyone making or planning on making a contribution. Now, Andrea, you keep mentioning that the links are in the chat. How do I see that?
If you're on a computer, it will open to the right of the video of the speaker without blocking anything. If you decide you're done, you can click the X at the top to close it, and that will not move you out of the meeting.
All right. So before we move on to the Q&A, can you please remind everyone how to virtually raise your hand?
Of course. Again, bring your mouse down to the bottom of your screen and look for the reactions button with the smiley face on it. Click it and then click anywhere on the raise hand bar. Zoom will put you in queue so that the moderator can call on you in the order your hand was raised. If you want to lower your hand, just repeat the steps and the bar will now have the lower hand option. If you'd like to see where you are in the queue, you can push the participants button and you will see this view showing you the order that you will be called on.
And for those of you on a phone, you can push *9.
Anything else I can show you guys today, Richard?
Nah, I think that covers it. It's time for questions.
Okay, yeah. So, first, I want to make just a quick pitch for next week's forum. We're going to have you can tune in by Zoom again. We'll have Bryce Reeder, assistant professor in political science at the University of Missouri Columbia, and he's going to explore the climate change and the question: can the Paris Climate Agreement save our imperiled world? Today we have George Guastello, the president and CEO of Union Station, been talking about Auschwitz, the exhibit they have there, and we have some questions ready to go. Richard, you're up.
Thank you, first of all, for helping bring this to Kansas City and for your outstanding presentation, George. I had a question. I understand that we lost, unfortunately, more than 6 million of the Jewish faith, tragically, with the Holocaust. I was wondering if you knew what the numbers were for like gypsies and homosexuals and political prisoners.
In the millions. I don't have that information in front of me. It's a giant wall in the exhibition. I can tell you when you walk through, you'll see it, and we quote it right down. When you read it, you are devastated by what the information was. It was mass, indiscriminate, but it was focused on those that were different. The Romas lost a significant number right under those. Jehovah's Witnesses were a significant group of people that were also murdered, as well as that of male homosexuals, because there's a deep story that we talk about how that came through different rulings, what that whole process was. And then Catholics, and then political prisoners, significant number of political prisoners. So the Polish, as well as anybody else that was against him or different than him or them. It wasn't just one person that we must always remember.
Thank you. Michael, what's your question?
This, to me, sounds a little decontextualized when we look at the biggest ethnic cleansing operation in history right after World War II, when like 14 million Germans were ripped out of their homes with only the clothes on their back, put on the same cattle cars, and sent over to Germany. So I really feel bad for everyone that was victimized during World War II, but then the victimization continued after World War II with larger numbers, or at least as large a number. Is there any way to recontextualize what actually happened and not just focus on the people that the Germans murdered, but the collective punishment that was inflicted on the Germans after World War II?
That's a good question. I mean, our goal was to tell the story of history of one particular place, which is Auschwitz. And yes, and I think as you obviously have some very good knowledge, you'll know that Auschwitz was a city and how it was created. So I think the goal of this exhibition is to say never again. And it wasn't so long ago, because I think we've seen genocide throughout our history, and we're still not learning that story. And I think there's stories that we can probably tell of many as how this genocide has continued on. And I think the National Museum does a very good job in one section about doing it. But with us having this being the largest exhibition in our history and covering more than our typical 15,000 square feet, to have it in 20,000 square feet and already spending people nearly 3 hours. We have some people spending up to 5 hours in the exhibition because they absorb so much information. Yeah, there's two right there, Chuck and Karen. I know 10. I know, and then you have to be nice to you because we say, okay, you have to leave now. But they're usually hopefully ready to leave because they're so emotionally drained and physically drained by standing all that time. But I think that's a very good question. I think that's one of the purposes of this exhibition, to tell the story, because after they left, the killing still continued on, and it was horrific. Thank you, though.
Thank you. Okay, Chuck and/or Karen.
Right. A couple of things. We were at the exhibit. We got tickets for noon because we knew we would be there a long time, and we were there 4.5 hours, taking everything in. It was not as heart-wrenching for me, at least, because in 2019 we were at Auschwitz-Birkenau. Okay, and that exhibit just is amazing. So two more things before I ask my question. The man who was just talking, Michael, I guess, those Germans that were taken from their home were not systematically murdered. They were just deported. I don't believe they were actually murdered. So there's a bit of a difference there. But have you been to Auschwitz-Birkenau in Poland to see the exhibit there?
Who?
What is George? Yes, George.
The pandemic is a horrific thing. We had planned a very special, working on this, a very special documentary. We were going to take Branya's grandchildren, and I don't know if any of you know, she was the one that founded M&M Bakery and was probably one of the most beloved in our community of the Jewish faith. I remember when she tells a story about how somebody came into her bakery on 31st Street with a gun and said, "I want all your money." And she said, "If I could outlive Hitler, I can outlive you. You can't scare me." He ran off. That's a story that I've been told. But we were going to take her grandchildren, because there were audio presentations from her that were recorded by Midwest Center for Holocaust Education, fly them to Auschwitz, and then do a documentary for PBS on them. And that was on April the 4th that we were to be in Poland, 2019. So guess what? The trip was canceled. I plan to go there after the exhibition, but it was a plan to be there, but the pandemic took it out. And there are many other things we were going to do. There is a significant number of, we were going to spend some time going into the artifact rooms and then looking at certain artifacts. One of the ones that we really wanted to focus on was the music that was created in Auschwitz. They created music that they would play when the prisoners got off the cars in order, again, to calm them down. All that music's been found. You'll see some pieces of that. And we were also to invite Michael Stern to join us. Michael Stern's grandfather was murdered in Auschwitz. So the pandemic took a little bit away from us for those deeper stories that we wanted to tell that had a connection to Kansas City. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, and we got a couple of questions from Carol and Chad. One was like, how long and that you spoke to this a little bit, how long would you recommend that people would set aside for the exhibit? And then the other question is it possible to parse that out, like do it and make shorter visits, if you could like not have to do it all at one time?
The audio tour's designed for about 2 hours. That's our challenge, to get the numbers of people through. We only allow 150 people an hour into the exhibition. That's all we can handle with the audio tours, because what we found is that they're not leaving in an hour or 2 hours. They're staying for 3, and it turns into this horrific numeric problem that we have. I will tell you my recommendation, and we've done it. We put 22,000 extra tickets on sale a few weeks ago by adding a 9 o'clock showing to the end of the year in the morning. That's the best time to come. I would have planned for, in the museum worlds, there's the readers, the streakers, and we target different people. We know they have people that just run through, streak through it fast, see it done. But this audio tour is like a documentary, and it has a TV screen, and you just get so engaged. And I've been at the station nearly 15 years, done a lot of these exhibitions. You can hear a pin drop in the exhibition. There is no noise. Of course, you listen to the audio tour, and we play the haunting music that was created specifically for this exhibition. When you see it, you kind of heard it at the beginning. But I would plan for at least 3 hours. You find yourself so engaged. I know we've had people in there. You find yourself so immersed in the story, you lose time. You're not exhausted. You just lose time. And as one of our guests said, it's not, it tears your heart up if you've never seen it before. But all I want and what I experience is when you enter the last room, that's when most of our guests lose it. That's where the emotional outpouring is, because you've taken all this in, and then you see what we truly did lose, which was an individual, and we don't know what we lost. When we think of those of the Jewish faith, Albert Einstein, there's one section where we show you all those of the Jewish faith and the great things that have happened in our society. Albert Einstein, they wanted him to be the president of Israel. He turned him down. I mean, we learn all the stories of the famous people that weren't murdered and what they gave to our community. And then we look at all those individuals that were murdered. And I have been taught to say the word murdered by Michael Berenbaum, who's one of the creators. He says, you can't candy coat this story when you say those that perished. He said they didn't perish, they were murdered. They were put in a car, they were put in a gas chamber, and their children were murdered. It's very simple. And I have learned to use that terminology as maybe dramatic as it sounds, but it's truly the right way to say it. And all those Jehovah's Witnesses that were murdered because they were different.
Hey, thanks, George. I haven't, and you mentioned the many other exhibits, and I'm just wondering, in your role, you get immersed in history and culture in seemingly overwhelming ways, I guess. How does this experience compare with other experiences that you brought to Union Station?
Yeah, it's a good question. I have told you this before in this presentation. I'm a firm believer that people, at least my mother always taught me, she said, people are sent to you for a reason. You don't know why they were sent to you until many years later. And that's how you connect the dots. How it ties to the exhibitions that we've done. Each one has had its own unique time in it. It's always one that says, wow, you got great lucky timing. You know, when we did Diana, which was right during the wedding, we knew that the son was going to get married. We were able to slide in. We didn't realize that 4,000 women would come at 2:00 in the morning to watch the son get married. But that was the story, and it brought all Kansas City together at a time of joy. But it connected emotional pasts with mothers and daughters and granddaughters and grandchildren that saw the wedding at the beginning and have that memory of it that they carry by. I think Titanic had a same type of story. We tell the story about the artifacts, and so did Pompeii. Each one of them helps us build that journey on. And I hope that this exhibition will allow us to build international recognition to get more and more, because we have to compete. And there are many that we want, but the exhibitors won't give it to us because they think Kansas City won't turn out. And we don't have a big enough population, even though we have over 2 million in our MSA. But when we do this, we strategically look at a 5-hour drive time, and then we explore how we can get those individuals to Kansas City. And that gets us pretty strong all the way out to Western Kansas, down to Oklahoma, usually on the other side of St. Louis, Columbia. Columbia is kind of the point, St. Louis sometimes doesn't come here, although we're getting good people from St. Louis. They have a big Jewish community. Did I answer your question?
Sure, yeah. And I guess now we will end the formal Q&A here. I think George agreed to stay on and to continue this conversation for a while for those who might want to speak more informally about it. Thanks again. This is George Guastello, the CEO and president of Union Station, talking about Auschwitz. Thanks for taking the time this morning. And a reminder that next week by Zoom, we're going to be back with Bryce Reeder on the Paris Climate Agreement.